Well, first, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, as the case may be. This is Arthur Roget with Verdantis, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar on why MDM should be part of your ERP planning exercise. I trust everyone can see both my screen and hear my voice. If not, please do chat with the moderator to work out any communication difficulties. For those of you who are sort of new to the Verdantis organization or have not heard me speak before, this is me. I'm one of the founders of Verdantis. I've got more years than I care to admit in the areas of master data management, master data governance, data quality improvement, database modeling, and enterprise architecture, as well as B2B or enterprise, cross-enterprise master data. So as today's sort of focus is, why MDM belongs in the ERP Blueprint, or why should we involve the master data management discipline within the ERP implementation or ERP consolidation planning stages. Let's go over a couple of the core reasons that we see based on probably 12 years worth of talking with our customers about why they see value in incorporating master data management, some degree master data quality improvement, master data governance at the earliest stages of ERP blueprinting. And by the way, when I say ERP, I mean enterprise resource, obviously. The same often can be held with EAM, enterprise asset management. So whether it's SAP and Oracle, or whether it is Ventix or Maximo, generally these still hold true. And today's webinar is very focused in that sort of generality sense. Three major driving reasons where it makes sense to include MDM in the ERP blueprint or ERP planning stage are up on screen. Now, the first one really is one that the CFO sort of like, which is cost controlling. And this is both controlling costs during the implementation, as well as controlling costs immediately after the implementation. We'll get more into why that matters. A lot of that is as much about organizational dynamics as it is about anything else. But nevertheless, it's core. And anytime you can show black and white cost reductions, you can be a hero. I think we all know that. Process integration is the second. Why are you generally pushing out for a ERP consolidation? It is to integrate processes across the business. Or it could be across multiple enterprises, or it could be a post-merger consolidation or post-merger instantiation. Could just be streamlining, but oftentimes it is more than just the financial analysis or the enterprise-wide visibility that drives the rationale for an ERP consolidation or a greenfield ERP ramp up. That process integration is generally across business or even between business units, and it's driven by sharing data. And that gets us to the third and final point, which is managing data better. I think we're all accustomed to separating data from information. So for us to control costs, we oftentimes need to integrate process to remove redundancy. To remove redundancy, I need better flow of information. That information comes from data. Managing that data or ensuring the quality of that data drives to better information. So in many ways, this is a closed loop scenario. Increasingly, though, there's more and more in the news, the buzz, the analysts talk about big data and data pools and the like. And that's only part of it. We look at big data, we look at data pool, we look at data analytics, and it's often to sort of support the move to digital commerce, a broader enwrap of the customer and the like. If I'm looking at saving costs, though, I'm looking at aggregation of information around the supply chain more so than the downstream value chain. So this is going to be supplier, vendor, market, material, both direct and indirect. So these are places where we've seen sort of immediacy of managing data better allows you to integrate the process better, whether that be just through MDM or through master data governance or stewardship, which leads to cost controlling. And really, there are a lot of costs to control when you're looking at an SAP implementation. or rather ERP implementation in broad strokes, right? It is arguably the most significant IT investment that a company will undertake. And why we continue to do it every 5, 7, or 10 years, it's sort of just a cyclical thing, right? You hit a certain level of maturity, it's at one point time to either rip and replace or to make a significant change. But this is not a one and done. And I think we've all come to understand that. But as an ERP or an EAM, can be the most critical enterprise level application, and the fundamental swap out or consolidation or significant rework, is a very large undertaking, especially for those organizations that are geographically disparate or are, in fact, post M&A, right? So I've got various dispersed and somewhat heterogeneous businesses coming together. It's absolutely important to make sure that when the ERP is initially loaded or when the EAM is initially configured, that the input data to that process is clean. It hits the right quality metrics. It is both complete, it is accurate. And the one thing that tends to be missing from everyone's sort of buzz around standards and taxonomies and all the good stuff that we all know and we enjoy and do add value, but at the end of the day, the data has to also be correct. So there's a limit to which matching and database and algorithmic work can improve data quality. Ultimately, it comes down to eyes on data to ensure not just accuracy and completeness, but correctness. Correct data ensures a lower cost of ERP implementation in a couple of ways. First and foremost, faster testing cycle. Second is higher user adoption in the early days. We'll touch more on those as our slides progress. Before I move on, I should remind everyone that if you have questions, please put them into the chat window on your WebEx panels, and we will sort of gather them up and cover them at the end. From a time check, I think our team sort of promoted about a 45-minute session. We will definitely try to keep within that window. So if ERP implementation or EAM implementation consolidation are big things, what are the significant mile marks within there that have to do with data? So there's certainly a significance of data migration and data quality when it comes to an ERP implementation. Migrating from various systems into a consolidated system is certainly important. Migrating the right data or data in the right way, in the right format, or just as importantly, with the right values, is incredibly key. Standardization, normalization, technical attribution, and harmonization are all key aspects to bringing your data together for an ERP implementation or consolidation. This is especially true as we look at instances where multiple ERPs are in play. If I'm consolidating 2, 3, a dozen, 100 different system instances of ERPs and EAMs, I've got multiple hierarchies, multiple coding systems, multiple languages, multiple units of measure, multiple ways of doing business, multiple cultural impacts in terms of the data governance and process cycle. I've got a mess. I have a challenge. And I look at challenges as simply opportunities to excel, which is, I'm sure, how most of us who are involved with ERP implementations have come to look at the world. These are not problems. These are just opportunities to excel. And the ways to excel is to provide both for data integration in those environments that are not going to be consolidated into a single instance, and then also to govern data, whether you are a single instance in your 2B state, or whether you will be in a federated or syndicated or distributed model in your 2B state. Governing data on an ongoing basis is incredibly important. So during the ERP implementation, it's a matter of literally integrating, migrating, and then oftentimes syndicating data from a common data hub into one or more of your platform instances. Typically, your EAM and ERP platforms offer rudimentary support for data migration, and minimal support for data quality improvement. And that is where, having a third party, someone who's dedicated both in terms of tool automation as well as domain expertise, can prove invaluable to both reducing the time cycle for your implementation or consolidation, reducing your overall cost, limiting the number of resources applied, and generally removing risk or taking risk out of the equation. Once that work is done, data governance post ERP go live protects the investment that you've made. And a good data governance platform should be an integral part to any major organizational process where the reliability of data is important. And a data management system is an easy way to implement proper data governance during the ERP implementation. And as we found through our practical experience, when you're looking at a multi-year ERP go live, data governance during implementation ensures that when your platform is ready, your data is ready, and there's no catch-up required. Now, last night while I was looking at this particular presentation, I was thinking of Star Trek, the original series that tells you how old I am, as we look at the blue diagrams to the left. But what this does do is it helps us remember that the impact of data and data quality and data completeness and the overall discipline around master data management impacts both the ERP implementation process itself, both implementation and consolidation, as well as post-implementation go live. And I know that as we review some of our use cases, thinking about some of our recent customers, everyone is very concerned about showing a 12-month or 18-month return on investment in very tangible ways, things that a CFO will not argue with. They're not worried about process improvement. They're not worried about better use of labor. They're worried about actual cash out of hand. And the trick to any successful extension of an ERP implementation to include a master data management and master data governance component or facet is to be able to, with very sure footing, warrant the savings and cost reductions that will be realized within 12 to 18 months. So during the ERP implementation, there are a couple of straightforward places where improved data and well-managed data play, namely the impact of clean data on the ERP implementation and stand-up. The second is the reduction in cycle time around testing and validation. It's remarkable how often I hear from customers who tried it without a master data plan to begin with, that as they're going through the testing and implementation, people were coming back and saying, this report does not true up, there must be a problem. Granted, I'm simplifying that particular claim, but after a very quick validation, it turns out that report never trued up. The data was always bad, just nobody had the stand up and forethought to admit it. It seems as though during ERP implementations, especially when there might be a large system integrator or some other shop out there helping with the process, that these things sort of come out of the closet. So having clean data, in addition to ensuring a good, proper deployment, just as importantly, helps increase user adoption from the get-go and facilitates the testing cycle, which, as many of you have probably experienced, is either 30 to 50% of your implementation schedule. Now, once the ERP does go live, or the EAM does go live, there are a couple of places where clean data has an immediate impact. And this clean data may not necessarily have been due to a master data management dictate, but let's face it, there's value in MDM. We know that from a theoretic, we've seen it from a practical, but if our goal today is to be able to justify it to the CFO, we want to be able to hit some very hard numbers. So the elimination of redundancy. We're not going to ship an order twice. We're not going to send an invoice twice. We're not going to order extra material to cover for bad inventory. I'm going to reduce stock because I can trust my numbers. And then, of course, ongoing procurement or sourcing or supply chain savings. things that can be quantified with lack of cash that was outlaid or a lower amount of cash that was outlaid for same goods or same services year over year. So clean data really comes from having a master data management discipline from the initiative and the beginning, right? Master data quality improvement, cleaning up the information that's going to go into your new ERP instance, whether it's greenfield or consolidated. I already mentioned a couple of points about quicker implementation. The ERP implementation will be quicker due to the incremental time for data quality improvement is really quite small when combined with the master data efforts around data migration. And the reliable data as an end result decreases cycle time during your testing and validation phases. Post-go live, eliminating redundancy, the duplicate order, the duplicate invoice, the duplicate collection call has meaningful cash value. Not the least of which is having to restate, income or revenue in the case of duplicate order creation, and also on the buy side on orders, ensuring that there is not duplicate, cost outlay for extra material. Inventory rationalization due to higher visibility. This is true whether you're a process manufacturer or you're a discrete manufacturer. That with accurate and consistent insight to what is currently in the shop or in the plant or in the distribution center, especially in the case of a post-M&A world, we see a reduction in inventory value, and that has immediate cash value in terms of holding costs, as well as cash value in terms of things not purchased. Ongoing savings floats between inventory and supply chain, not including the soft costs around labor, which, depending on how your metrics today are, if you're, let's say, a discrete manufacturer, you may be able to prove those numbers out as well. One of the hindrances or stumbling blocks is seeing MDM, and this goes on probably for the last 5 to 7 years, but why master data management has not always taken a strong, almost an anchor point for ERP implementations is that the business value of MDM is seen as less significant and not within the core IT discipline. I think that's why it's usually been left out from ERP blueprints. However, as we've already sort of highlighted, and we'll share with you some examples, good use of master data management and to some degree master data governance has direct business value. And if the ERP or the EAM is all about supporting the business, I think it's high time that MDM discipline take its rightful place in the ERP blueprint. Just by the numbers, and these are from Aberdeen research. When you integrate MDM into your ERP planning and ERP implementation, there are a couple of key metrics on this table and the forthcoming tables that follow that show direct financial improvement. And this is based on their survey. If I remember right, the survey was about 120 Fortune 500 firms. And for those of you who are joining from outside of the US, these would be firms greater than $2 billion in sales. There's a 4% improvement for those organizations that have MDM integrated with their ERP implementation for complete and on-time deliveries of supply chain items. This is, input value chain. There is a 5% increase in inventory accuracy. And I think we all know that going from 91 to 96%, that's a big jump. We're not talking 60 to 65 here. In terms of creating a more lean organization, we see a 10% jump in inventory turn optimization. Clearly a key indicator about the agile nature of an organization. If we look at the ROI associated with having the ERP be implemented with or in conjunction with a master data management program, we're seeing a 3% difference or gain in the reduction of operational costs post ERP go live. That's in that first 12 to 18 months. I think with the Aberdeen study was the first 12 months. Reduction in administrative costs, a 4% gain. And let's all remember, right, for every dollar you save in costs, it's the same as $10 or 10 euros or 10 yen that you would make in net new sales. Oftentimes, it's easier or more straightforward to adjust the cost number rather than be optimistic about your revenue numbers. We see a 3% gain in on-time schedule compliance, a slight gain in the reduction in time to decision, but probably the most impactful one for a CFO, the change in profitability over 2 consecutive fiscal years. 4% gain for those that have implemented MDM with an ERP implementation. That moves the dial if I'm looking at shareholder value, key performance indicators for the finance team, the controller, CFO, treasury, and the executive team. So the purpose of me including these is really to sort of validate that the role of MDM in an ERP consolidation or implementation is really about bringing additional business value into the ROI equation. I'll take a couple more minutes and go through some high-level case studies. They'll get more granular as we go. The first one, just in terms of size and scope, is a global organization in the sort of industrial water treatment business. These are facilities that would clean community or municipality water supplies on a global basis. 18 different business platforms after a series of acquisitions, 1.3 million items as active material for their process. Because they had grown through significant acquisitions, there were no corporate categorization standards for their parts or their material. There was no common naming convention or protocol for the parts that they had, no technical attribution maps. And because these companies that they had acquired and integrated were all very successful and had very long heritage and legacy backgrounds, there were a lot of duplicates. We're talking serious double digits. Of the benefits that they derived on the initial implementation were to go through a harmonization process and collapse that 1.3 million SKUs to provide consistent and actionable information from their parts and materials data, which improved their spend and supply management information, and just as importantly, enabled part standardization and the beginning of a lean inventory practice. On an ongoing basis, because even the SAP go live for this account was several years in the running, was the requirement and the ability to implement process standardization using Verdantis Integrity for data governance that allowed for the identification and prevention of duplicates and provided a level of interface across the systems while they were being consolidated. So data governance during the implementation process to support the consolidation. And then, of course, that solution was decommissioned once they had a single unified platform. To run through some dollars and cents examples, with apologies to our non-US friends, let's take an example of one of our customers, a process manufacturer, about $8 billion in turnover revenue, $1 billion in maintenance, repair, and operations spend, and $400 million in MRO, maintenance, repair, and operations inventory. the number of items in that MRO inventory, about 400,000 after the initial sort of merger of two businesses. Post-harmonization results were a reduction from 400,000 to 340,000 unique items. Now, for folks who were just worried about, data quality or data, governance or master data reduction numbers, yeah, I mean, this was a 15% reduction in total SKUs, right? 60,000 records came off the table. Just as importantly, though, this was a 10% reduction, or at least an identification, of duplicate inventory assets by value. Now, how does this translate to actual sort of cash in hand? The annual inventory carry cost reduction was 4.4%. That was their factored cost of capital at the time. So with 400 million in inventory, a 10% duplicate identified, that was 40 million in duplicate inventory value. The write-down of factored costs at 4.4% of 40 million was $1.7 million. Notice that we do not take into account that we have extra stock of $40 million that we don't have to buy this year. Right? We can add that to that number as we continue to look at the math. The reason why that number is not factored into the value, for those of you who are more on the practical side, is that duplicate inventory may not necessarily be in deployment ready state. Right? It could be rusted out, it could be up on a shelf and unreachable. But from a finance perspective, CFO can take a one-time write-off and he writes off the carry cost. That's 1.7. Now, additionally, because we do see 15% SKU reduction, and we are able to leverage an aggregation of demand of 15% across the 1 billion in MRO, what that does is add 150 million additional dollars to the current addressable spend by the procurement and purchasing teams at this company. The moment this data becomes available and they can now consider the spend under management, they are immediately able to start running this through their normal strategic sourcing practice. And in the course of 18 months, basically a full inventory turn cycle for these parts on average, they were able to drop 12.5% on that 150 million in actual cost savings. Same goods, lower cost, which is an incremental 18 million. So we're looking at, out of an initial sort of spend of 400 or 1 billion, is right now about 19.7 million in savings. With the improved data quality associated with the MDM effort, they were able to republish their item master. And due to the increased quality of the item master, user adoption of their item master and procurement catalog model allowed them to reduce their Maverick spend from 40% to 25%. That was a 15% gain, which meant an additional $120 million in on-contract spending that was previously off-contract Maverick. In the course of the first 18 months post-go-live, they were able to realize 16.5% savings on average across this incremental 120 million. That netted in true dollar form reduced cost for same items purchased of 19.8 million, bringing the total savings, excluding the 40 million in an inventory burn down, to 39.5 million. If we add the other 40, we're at about 80 million savings in our first 18 months. Against the 1 billion MRO spend, that is 8%. That is not a bad number. That is indicative of what we've seen across industries and across our 100+ Fortune 500 clients. We've seen numbers as high as 22, we've seen numbers as low as 3, but we've never seen someone not drive incremental real value through the adoption of an MDM initiative as a bolt-on or parallel project to their ERP implementation or ERP consolidation. Really, this comes from our experience over the last 12 years. Our experience and our focus has been in the domain of parts and material, both sell side and buy side, with automated solutions for the data harmonization, sort of that get it clean process during ERP implementations, and also a data governance solution called Integrity for keeping that data clean during either prolonged implementations or post-go live in an environment where you've got multiple ERP or EAM platforms. With that, I am going to turn it over for questions. And give me just a second while I look to see what might be queued up. And please, now is a great time to start typing your questions in. Sorry for the background noise. It's just my hands on the keyboard while I look at the questions. Okay. I think we probably got time for 2 or 3 before we hit our 45-minute max. Oh, I like this one. Okay. We are halfway through our SAP implementation. Should I go for an MDM initiative now? What are the benefits and shortcomings of a late implementation? Without knowing specifics, I'm going to say, well, yeah, you should go. Depending on whether you are consolidating or you are just sort of standing up fresh. I'm assuming you're consolidating if you're asking and you're already halfway through or partial of the way through. You've probably got your core blueprint. You've got your functional capabilities. You've got business owners involved around the table. It's not too late to get ownership of data domains. You probably already have someone for customer. You already have one for supplier. All right, supplier will be split between finance and procurement. Customer will be between sales and finance. For sell-side product, it's likely going to be marketing, product maybe. For material, likely split between operations, logistics, and procurement. What you need to do from a core element perspective, because I'm quite certain that your chart of accounts, your customers, probably even your suppliers, have already been addressed by your system integrator, that if you're looking at your product master and your material master, now's the time to get that effort started. You've already got people in the right mindset. And as I said in one of my earlier slides, the incremental cost to putting resource, labor on your side to do some additional extracts and get this sort of, ready for a bid out or to bring in your trusted partners is going to be like a 2% hit to your overall budget at that. In fact, it's interesting. That brings me to another point. The question here is, what percentage of my ERP budget should I allocate for MDM? On average, data management across all domains should be about 10% of your ERP budget. At least that's what we've seen over the years. And I think you're going to see like 5% of that. So 5% of your overall ERP budget is going to go to customer, probably 2% to supplier, 3% to material. If you're a discrete manufacturer, maybe 4%, depending on how many products you have. And then things like chart of accounts, bomb breakouts, tax asset codes, plant location, those kinds of things. Those are already buried within your go-live budget, so no need to really worry about it. Follow-up question here. How long does it take for a typical tool to become operational? I'm not sure whether that's going to be a harmonization tool or a data governance tool. We've seen for data harmonization that it's often a tool deployment with a fair amount of domain expertise behind it, and they tend to stand up pretty quick. The QA process is the thing that takes a fairly long time. Without knowing your specifics, just to give you maybe a benchmark here, we probably see about 30 days for every 100, maybe every 80,000 SKUs in terms of buy-side parts. It's about twice that if it's sell-side product because you've got the domain expertise in-house. you probably do about 200,000 products, sell-side products in a month. Vendors considerably shorter because you're going to just take that and outsource it, right? So you're going to ship that out to BVD if you're in Europe, or D&B or an Equifax here in the US. So the cleansing there is pretty clean. If it's data governance, that's where I see the real big discrepancies. On sell-side product or buy-side materials, there are sort of generic governance platforms from your ERP vendors. Stand-up time is anywhere from, say 6 months, optimistically, but more likely 9 months to 12. Our solutions, which are purpose-built to the domains, we turnkey those things out anywhere from 8 weeks to 20 weeks. So we're probably on a magnitude of 3 to 5 times faster for deployment. And really, just because we've been doing this for darn near a dozen years. We have. Sorry, we're just reading again. How problematic is a typical MDM implementation? Semicolon. Okay. We have plants and staff all around the world, and getting software to run at all locations has been a big headache. Yeah, I remember what I said earlier, though. That's an opportunity to excel. If we want to put our optimistic hat on. Increasingly, if you were to ask me 7 years ago, what's the challenge with global rollouts, I would have been more concerned about those European partners that are on the call. Increasingly, though, over the last 7 to 10 years, even the stalwart U.S. headquartered companies are increasingly global, right? They may be headquartered here, but we've got operations in Canada, we've got operations in Mexico, we've got operations in South America, we've got operations in Europe, Africa, Asia, right? We are increasingly global. That being said, our solution sets, I think we work with something like 26 different languages right now. Our software tools are available in a dozen languages with varying degrees of complexity. The ability to do data provisioning, right, or data stewardship in a global center across multiple languages is just, it's de rigueur. I mean, it's requirement today. So yeah, it's a hassle. If you do it right, it can be well executed. And I'll, as a veteran, so to speak, as our company, as a veteran of probably more than half of our business has been large global rollouts. This is a great opportunity to expand your cultural awareness, to expand your teams, and to really learn and share best practices across the globe. So having team members who will join a call, Brazilian Portuguese or Dutch or German or Chinese, hey, it's all one happy world, right? So first, from a master data management perspective, the data is global. You're going to have to live with that. Our tools are proven out to support multi-language. You want to be able to harmonize data across the globe, literally, to standardize on your hierarchies, your taxonomies, your noun modifier naming conventions, your technical attributes, whether it's a sell-side product or buy-side material. And you want to do that quickly. The advantage also of a global rollout is you've got a distributed team, and you will be able to take advantage of best practice and distributed labor. So how problematic is a typical MDM implementation? It's not a problem, right? It's a challenge, opportunity to excel. Working globally, this is what we all do. It's what we should do. And certainly, I'll put the Verdantis sort of hat in the ring that we're a good group to work with if that's the case. With that, we are sort of wrapping up. Let me just see if I've got any additional last-minute questions. It's good to have this many questions. There we go. How does one justify the MDM-related add-on costs? Share a copy of this presentation. No, seriously. This is all about monetization. If you're looking to increment your budget and you want to get a budget bump of 1 to 2 points off your ERP implementation budget, unless you've got one monster budget already, look at some of the savings that we highlighted, right? You take an average organization, you look at their sort of addressable costs that can be shaken loose as part of an MDM extension to an ERP project and focus on the sort of the supply side of the value chain. Now, the reason I suggest that is quite simply, it is the least political and arguably most underserved part of an ERP implementation, meaning that you'll hit the least resistance, you'll be able to show the greatest value, and you're much more likely to gain the support of operations head for logistics and operations cost reduction and procurement, reduced cost. All right, these are things that hit their core KPIs, and they will help validate the numbers that I shared. We do have a business case template that we're happy to share. Please just reach out to someone here at Verdantis or info@verdantis.com, and we are absolutely happy to share that with you. No obligation kind of thing, but we're happy to sort of show you, or at least share with you, how some of the best performing companies around have been able to extend their ERP or EAM implementations to include an MDM component that helped drive serious hard dollar or hard currency savings within 12 months of go live. With that, I thank you very much. I'm getting the time's up signal from our marketing team. Everyone, have a great afternoon, morning, or evening, as the case may be. And thank you again. This is Arthur Agat with Verdantis.